Dear students, after we had seen poem introduction and continuation of the poem Kalahandi in the last sessions, in this 17th session, I am going to give the progression of the poem Kalahandi. So here are also some of the learning objectives. It definitely these definitely going to help to the students to understand the criticism of the poet on the poor efforts of the government for the betterment of situation, to make the students to know about the fake statistics given by the government and also the government officials. So these are some of the session outcomes. At the end of the poem, if the students read well, they will be able to get the clear cut pictures of Kalahandi through the concluding stanzas of the poem. The students will get the factual things about the TVs, and mass media, politicians, bureaucrats, and governments for their propagandas and for their TPRs. They also come to know that students how TVs or media, mass media, and bureaucrats befool people through their news or through their words. So here are some recaps of the poem. In the previous session, the students came to know, understand about diseases and lack, deprivation, suffering. They have got how Kalandi has become in a metaphor for the suffering, for the poor, death, like that. They have understood how government officials had made many plans for the for village but failed, and also how politicians were showing their uh, uh, crocodile tears. So, with the let us go through the progress of the poem. The poet is going to address the readers, the more privileged residents of towns and cities that have never been overcast by the shadow of such penury, such extreme want or need. So, towards the end of the poem, that means in the fifth stanza, he invites the readers or the people to come to take a clear, closer look at Kalahandi. That means if one visits at Kalahandi, if one looks with his clear eyes at Kalahandi, he he can understand easily the situations of the real pictures of Kalahandi. He seems to suggest that we have distanced ourselves from the real pains and suffering of the people who have been experienced it. So we have looked from offer and not allowed our hearts to be touched. Therefore, we have remained unaffected by the situations. Actually, we don't know the real situations of Kalahandi, so we just read the descriptions about Kalahandi or situations of Kalahandi, or our overexposure to such scene in the media have made our hearts closed and hard. When we see the suffering of the people, definitely it leaves us unmoved, and we will also going to suffer, seem to suffer with them. This verse is a strong indictment of the press, the media, the politicians, the bureaucrats, every single person who exploits the around us situation of Kalandi's abject poverty for their own gain. So, media for probably for their TRP, politicians for their propaganda, bureaucrats for the benefits of for the bribery of money from the plans, like that. So the media dwell on Kalahandi to increase their TRP ratings only. The channels become popular as they seem to be pulling on the heartstrings of the viewers. Some leaders, politicians, appear on TV. They visit the site of the natural disaster and shed their crocodile tears only. They don't express real feelings for the situations. So the poet calls these tears as crocodile tears. That means fake tears, fake sympathy. Then an ancient anecdote says that crocodiles cry in order to lure their victims to themselves, or they cry while eating them. So, in the same way, these politicians also shed their tears only for the pretension. Then this seems an apt description of the many who use the situation to further their own ends. They appear to be crying for the tragedy that has struck the people, but in truth, in fact, they are using the occasions to gain their popularity for themselves only. Even the government officials, what they make, those were all false promises, and act as if they truly sympathize with the loss of the villagers, with the desperations or the bad situations of the villagers. But in reality, they are only interested in gaining public support and have no interest in the destitute denizens of Kalahandi. So the sympathy they display, they show, costs them nothing because there is no loss to themselves. Those who are involved in planning also make exaggerated statements, and they give false assurances that they will look into these matters so that in the future the village will be better prepared for such natural calamities. But by now, the people suspect that these are untrue, and that the bureaucrats making these assurances have no intention of following up on them or actually doing anything. So all the officials or bureaucrats were false. So in the final stanza, the poet is looking at us. That means is in the concluding stanza of the poem, the poet is looking at us, you and I. He directly refers you and I. What are you going to do about Kalahandi? He seems to ask, what is my response to Kalahandi going to be? He wants to know. He makes a list of some of the responses one generally gets in these situations. Some people feel a deep sense of regret, of remorse in the depths of their being. They really do feel very bad. The trouble is this, just a passing feeling. It does not last long enough to shift from feeling to action. They express only the lip sympathy. They do not having any actions which can be improved to the situations, and so it just vanishes. So thus says that it does not surface occasionally in the form of a nagging conscience, a rare and unexpected occurrence, but since it does not last, it is very fleeting, nothing comes out of it. Sometimes the poet says that Kalahandi features in our nightmares. So, if one looks at the real situations of Kalahandi, they come in our sleeps like nightmares. That is the idea of the poet. So, he says that when we are in sound sleep, in our beds of contentment, safe, secure and distanced from the tragedies of life, we are shaken into awareness of what some of our less fortunate brethren are going through. Our troubled nightmares force thoughts that would otherwise be quite distant from our minds. There are the cries of hunger, pangs that rend the air, the anguish of disease that has assaulted. These are the very pathetic situations of Kalahandi, but no help seems to be at hand. Fear looms over like ominous dark clouds all over. Ensure what new trauma they hold in store for those who are already plugged with difficulties. So, to end this poem of this session, there is everywhere we can say as if the bloodshed. What may bring about a fresh rampage of people killing their fellow men? Who knows? In addition to the natural disasters, there are the fires, the riots, the bomb blasts, the never ending saga of man's inhumanity to man. All these comprise the sense of impending doom that hangs over the villagers of Kalahandi. The poet then asks very pertinent question, may be discussed in the next session, the what he has asked. That means he was very moved by this Kalahandi situation. So let us see the remaining things in the next session.